Violence doesn't always involve fists or harsh words. Sometimes a quiet, dignified act can resonate more powerfully than any argument. The story below exemplifies the strength of composure in the face of disrespect and how one man transformed an awkward situation into a profound lesson in class and influence. He refused to sell her a car because of her politics, so she left quietly. The next day, her husband showed up, not to argue, not to shout, but to show exactly what class looks like under pressure. It was a late Saturday morning in Garland, Texas, and the sun was already pressing down hard on the pavement. Jasmine Crockett didn't mind the heat. She was used to it. What mattered more was the look on her nephew Devin's face when she told him what they were doing that day. "Put your shoes on," she said, dangling the car keys in front of him. "We're going shopping." "For what?" Devin asked, his voice still groggy from sleeping in. "You'll see," she smiled. "But wear something decent. We're not going to the mall." They pulled up to Flagstone Auto Group, a local dealership known for its decent prices and wide selection of pre-owned cars. Jasmine had done her research. She wasn't here for show. She had her eye on a reliable black Camry she saw listed online, something Devin could drive to school and his part-time job. Devin didn't suspect a thing. He followed her through the showroom doors, still trying to figure out if this was some errand or something more. "I thought you had meetings today," he asked. "I did, but you're more important." The showroom was air-conditioned, spotless, quiet. Salespeople in button-downs milled around, some helping customers, others pretending not to notice them walk in. Jasmine looked around, scanning for someone who could assist. She didn't need special treatment. She just wanted to buy a car, same as anyone else. But then she noticed a man at the far desk, middle-aged, red-faced, leaning back in a leather office chair with one foot up on his desk. He wore a red cap with white stitching. Jasmine saw the letters even from across the room. MAGA. She exhaled through her nose gently, like someone trying not to give energy to something small and predictable. But Devin didn't notice any of that. He was already walking up to a silver sedan. "Auntie, this one's clean." She smiled. "We'll check it out in a second." Before she could wave over one of the younger sales guys, the man in the cap stood up and walked toward them. His smile was thin and tight. "Can I help you with something?" he asked, stopping short in front of Jasmine. "Yes," she said. "We're looking at that black Camry you've got listed online." The man didn't respond right away. His eyes shifted between her face and the boy beside her, then back to her again. "You, Jasmine Crockett?" he asked, almost like a dare. She hesitated, unsure if it mattered. "Yes, I am." There was a pause that didn't feel right. "Well," he said, "we don't serve politicians here who disrespect this country." Her mouth parted slightly, like maybe she misheard. "Excuse me. We believe in respecting American values around here," he said, nodding once like it was final. "And I've seen what you say on TV. This is a private business. We reserve the right." Devin stepped closer to his aunt, sensing something off. "Sir," Jasmine said calmly, "I'm just here to buy a car for my nephew. You can do that somewhere else." One of the other salespeople nearby looked up from their desk. A woman at the coffee station froze mid-pour. The room wasn't loud, but the energy changed. Jasmine inhaled, straightened her shoulders, and slowly turned to her nephew. "Come on, Dev. We're not staying." "But Auntie." "It's fine," she said, guiding him toward the door. "Let's go." She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't give him the fight he seemed to want. But as she walked out the door, she could feel every eye in the room following them. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she hadn't. And that silence, awkward, loaded, uncomfortable, spoke louder than anything. However, back in the car, with the engine running and her hands still steady on the wheel, something in Jasmine's chest wouldn't let go of what just happened. The ride home wasn't loud. Devin sat in the passenger's seat, fidgeting with his phone, unsure of what to say. Jasmine kept her eyes on the road, her expression unreadable. She didn't turn the radio on. She didn't need the noise. Halfway through their drive, Devin finally spoke. "Was that about you being on TV and stuff?" Jasmine glanced at him, then back at the road. "Yeah, probably. But why would he do that? I mean, you didn't even say anything wrong." She gave a short laugh, dry and low. "Some people don't need a reason. They just need a target." Devin didn't respond. He was still too young to understand the weight of moments like that, but old enough to recognize when something fell off. Jasmine reached over and gave his hand a quick squeeze. "Don't worry about it," she said. "We'll find your car somewhere else." Nathaniel's plan. Later that afternoon, when Devin was out with his cousins, Jasmine sat at the kitchen table with a cold glass of water and replayed every second in her head. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't even angry, not in the traditional sense. It was more like a crack in the floor she'd already patched 100 times, splitting open again. She'd felt this kind of targeted disrespect before, in courtrooms, on panels, on planes. Yet somehow this one stuck because it wasn't just about her. It was about Devin, about what he saw, about what that man had tried to show him. She opened her laptop, searching for the dealership. Flagstone Auto Group, manager's name, Cliff Bosworth. She stared at the photo of him on their About Us page, arms crossed, grin wide. His cap wasn't in the photo, but the energy matched. A knock at the door pulled her back. Her husband, Nathaniel, walked in with his blazer slung over his shoulder, still in slacks from a morning meeting in Plano. He looked at her face before he even set his keys down. "What happened?" She exhaled through her teeth. "We want to get Devin a car, Flagstone, the one off Jupiter Road," and she told him everything, not dramatically, just as it happened, word for word. Nathaniel listened without interrupting, hands clasped, leaning against the kitchen counter. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't raise his voice. When she finished, he took a slow sip of water and set the glass down carefully. "That the place with the gray brick building?" "Yeah." Manager called Cliff. She nodded. He was silent for a moment. Then he stood straight, reached for his phone, and made a call. "Yeah, hey, it's Nate," he said. "I need the number for that delivery service we used last quarter, the one out of Irving." "Yeah, that's the one." A pause. "Cool. Text it to me." "Appreciate it." He ended the call and walked to the closet. Jasmine watched him, arms folded. "You're not going to show up there and cause a scene, right?" she said. He looked at her, pulling out a black garment bag. "No, I'm just going to remind him who he turned away." She smiled, shaking her head. "You're so dramatic." "I don't need to yell," he replied. "People like that. They don't forget silence when it costs them something." He kissed her forehead, pulled the bag over his shoulder, and went upstairs. Yet Jasmine knew her husband well enough to recognize that when he got quiet like that, it wasn't for show. It was strategy, the silent confrontation. The next morning, the sky was overcast, and the air had that heavy, still feeling like something was waiting to drop. Jasmine stood by the kitchen counter, flipping through a stack of mail that didn't matter, bills, newsletters, a flyer for lawn service. Her mind wasn't on any of it. Devin came downstairs, backpack slung over one shoulder. He paused when he saw her. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm fine, baby. Just thinking." He shifted awkwardly. "Look, I'm sorry about yesterday. You were just trying to do something good for me." "Stop," she interrupted gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. That wasn't your fault." He looked at her like he wanted to say more, but didn't know how, so he just nodded and grabbed a banana from the fruit bowl before heading toward the door. "Be good," she said. "I will." The door shut behind him, and Jasmine stood there in the quiet, still holding a piece of junk mail she hadn't even looked at. She put it down and finally allowed herself a moment. Yesterday wasn't the first time she'd been disrespected, but something about that man's smugness, the way he had said, "We don't serve politicians like you," as if it were his badge of honor, felt personal, calculated. And it wasn't just about her career or her views. It was about being a black woman walking into a space where someone had already decided she didn't belong before she'd said a single word. She didn't need to post about it. She didn't call the news. That wasn't her way. Not for this. But last night, when Nathaniel laid out his suit across the bed and set his cufflinks beside his watch, she knew he had something in mind that wasn't about revenge. He'd been calm, too calm, which meant he wasn't just reacting. He was planning. The kind of planning you learn when you've been underestimated more times than you can count. The kind of silence that makes noise. At noon, she got a text. "Be home around 4 o'clock. Let Devin know." She stared at the message for a second before replying. "Got it. Everything okay?" No reply. Just read receipts. She went about her day, ran errands, picked up groceries, returned a call from her campaign office about an upcoming town hall. Everything ordinary, yet something inside her was pacing. Meanwhile, over at Flagstone Auto Group, business was steady. The same salesman in pastel shirts, the same stream of customers looking for good credit deals and gently used F-150s. Nobody mentioned what had happened yesterday, yet people remembered. A few of the younger staff had caught Jasmine on TV before. They knew who she was. They saw the look on Cliff's face when he turned her away. Still, no one said a word. The special customer. Back home, Jasmine reheated leftovers and set the table for Devin, who had just come back from school. He looked at her, then glanced at the clock. "Uncle Nate back yet?" "Any minute now," she said. Devin sat down and opened his notebook, pretending to do homework, but sneaking glances toward the window every few minutes. It was almost 5 when they heard the sound of tires outside. Not loud, but distinct. Jasmine peeked through the blinds. He was here. However, it wasn't just Nathaniel stepping out of the car that made her freeze. It was the car itself. The black Rolls-Royce Phantom looked like it didn't belong on their street. And not because it was out of place, but because it almost didn't seem real. Sleek, polished, heavy with quiet authority. It pulled up without a sound, gliding more than rolling, and came to a gentle stop in front of the house. Devin stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. "Whoa!" Jasmine didn't say a word. She just opened the front door and watched as Nathaniel stepped out. Crisp black suit, pocket square, shoes shine like glass. Not rushed, not overdone, just deliberate. He didn't wave. He didn't look around for an audience. He walked straight inside, loosened his tie, and placed his phone on the counter. "I take it that's not a rental," Jasmine said, arms crossed. "It is, but not in the way you think." He walked over and pulled off his jacket. "I didn't go down there to yell. Didn't go to prove anything either. Just had a couple of conversations." "With who?" "A couple guys in finance. One from the parent group that owns Flagstone, one from a logistics firm that delivers their inventory from auction. Turns out they all talk to each other more than you'd think." Jasmine raised an eyebrow. Nathaniel poured a glass of water and continued. "So, I asked a question. What happens when perceptions start costing money? When stories like this start affecting buyer behavior? And when a high-end client turns his back on a dealership, not out of protest, but out of principle?" She tilted her head, reading between the lines. "I also told them I'd be dropping by to say hi." Devin was now standing by the window, mouth half open. "Uncle Nate, you drove that thing up in there?" Nathaniel smiled without showing teeth. "I didn't say a word, just pulled into the lot, asked for Cliff by name, and waited. He came out, saw the car, saw me, and before he even got a word out, I handed him a business card and told him, 'You don't have to serve me either, but I'm the kind of customer you'll miss.'" Jasmine covered her mouth, trying not to laugh. "I didn't make a scene," he continued. "Didn't need to. Just told him I was there yesterday, but not as me. I was there as her husband, and I watched her leave with grace after he tried to humiliate her. So, I wanted to return the moment with silence." Devin's eyes were wide. "What did he say?" Nathaniel looked at his nephew, paused, then shrugged. "Nothing. He just stared. You could see the calculations happening. He realized exactly what he'd done." Jasmine sat down slowly, as if the full weight of what he did was just sinking in. "You didn't have to do all that," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but some lessons aren't taught with words." There was a pause, not empty but full. Jasmine looked across the table at her husband, not just as the man she married, but as someone who understood the value of patience, of control, of letting others trip over the silence they once tried to use against you. Devin leaned against the doorframe. "Can we still get a car today?" They all laughed. Even Nathaniel cracked a smile. "Yeah," he said, "but not from there." However, before they even got us searching again, the dealership wasn't done with them just yet. Flagstone Auto Group had seen all types of vehicles roll through. Pickup trucks caked in ranch dirt, family minivans with stickers peeling off the windows, and the occasional luxury car brought in for trade. Nonetheless, no one forgot the Black Phantom. That morning, it glided onto the lot like something out of a music video. No bass line, no bravado, just presence, the kind of arrival that made every head turn without knowing why. Nathaniel didn't park in one of the customer spots. Instead, he rolled right up front in the space marked manager only, turned off the engine, and stepped out as if he had every right to be there. Inside the dealership, the staff noticed. People peered over computer screens, phones lowered mid-scroll. A few whispered. One guy muttered, "That's the dude from yesterday." Cliff Bosworth, the manager, was in his office sipping coffee from his stainless steel mug, half reading an email. When he looked up and saw the car, something in his posture shifted. He stood, adjusted his shirt collar, and walked to the glass. Nathaniel stood outside, buttoned jacket, still and patient. He wasn't looking around, wasn't checking his watch, just waiting. Cliff stepped out of his office and walked slowly toward the door. For a second, he seemed unsure, as if he wasn't quite ready to face whatever this was. "Can I help you?" Cliff asked as he approached, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Nathaniel pulled out a slim card from his inner pocket and handed it over. "That's my name. I believe you met my wife yesterday." Cliff blinked. "The Congresswoman?" Nathaniel didn't answer. He simply let the silence do its work. Look, it's not what it looked like," Cliff started. "We have policies, and sometimes." Nathaniel tilted his head slightly. "You told her she wasn't welcome because of who she is. That's not a policy. That's a choice." The manager's throat bobbed. "I wasn't trying to be disrespectful." "You succeeded anyway," Nathaniel replied. "But I'm not here to argue." Cliff looked confused. "I came here to show you what grace looks like," Nathaniel said. "Because yesterday, when you had a chance to treat someone with decency, you chose power instead. So today I came back with power and gave you the chance to watch it walk away." With that, Nathaniel turned, walked back to the Rolls, and got in. No further comment, no show, no gloating. The entire staff had stopped pretending they weren't watching. One of the younger salesmen near the entrance let out a slow whistle under his breath. Cliff just stood there, holding the business card, his reflection staring back at him in the Phantom's glossy paint as it pulled away. Inside, the receptionist looked up at her coworker. "That's got to be one of the coldest things I've ever seen." He nodded. "Yeah, and the loudest without saying a damn thing." Back home, Jasmine and Devin were finishing lunch when the garage opened. Devin ran to the door. "How was it?" he asked, wide-eyed. Nathaniel stepped in and smiled. "Handled." Jasmine didn't ask for details. She could see it in his face. Therefore, whatever message needed sending, it landed. Later that evening, she checked her phone and saw an email. No subject line, no company letterhead, just a plain message from someone in operations at Flagstone's parent company. "Congresswoman Crockett, please know that what happened yesterday does not reflect the values of our organization. We are taking internal steps to review the matter. Thank you for your grace and discretion." She read it once, then again. She didn't reply, not yet. Nevertheless, as she sat in the quiet, Jasmine realized that sometimes silence travels farther than outrage ever could. The following week, a few local blogs picked up whispers of what happened at Flagstone. Nothing sensational, just murmurs about a customer being turned away and a luxury car appearing the next day with no sale, no argument, no drama. Someone had captured a blurry photo of the Rolls-Royce parked in front along with the line. "Man pulls up in 500K car after wife denied service." Says nothing, leaves everything. The post didn't go viral. It didn't need to because the people who needed to hear it, they already had. Inside the dealership, Cliff had grown quieter. Not out of guilt, but out of calculation. The moment kept replaying in his head. That man's stillness, the weight behind it, the fact that nobody came back yelling, tweeting, or organizing a boycott. Just presence. Calm control, but control with consequences. It made him uneasy. And although Cliff never issued a public apology, the dealership suddenly updated their internal training policies. Sensitivity seminars were booked. HR memos were circulated. He never admitted it was because of that visit, but people knew. At a local barbershop 2 towns over, an older man reading the story on his tablet chuckled. "That's how you do it." Didn't raise a finger. Didn't say much. But that manager is going to remember that feeling for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, back at home, Jasmine and Nathaniel sat on the back patio. The air was warmer than usual for early spring, the breeze mild. Devin was inside playing video games with his cousin, his laughter echoing down the hallway. Jasmine sipped her iced tea and looked over at her husband. "You think he got the message?" she asked. Nathaniel didn't answer right away. He sat with one leg crossed over the other, watching the light shift across the grass. He did, he finally said, but that wasn't the goal. She looked at him puzzled. What was? Nathaniel turned to her. To show Devin how you handle being disrespected without becoming small. To let him see that you don't have to shout to be heard, and that some people aren't worth your energy, but they'll still feel your presence. Jasmine nodded slowly. That landed because it wasn't about shaming anyone. It wasn't about flipping the script. It was about teaching the next generation by example how to carry yourself when people try to shrink you. They sat there for a while without speaking, just letting the stillness breathe. Inside, Devin peeked through the window, watching them. He didn't say anything either, but his eyes carried something new. Respect that went deeper than politics or speeches or even the car that had pulled into the dealership. It was the kind of respect earned by watching people hold their ground without stomping. The next day, Jasmine drove Devin to another dealership. This one on the edge of town, family-owned, smaller, perhaps less polished, but more human. They were greeted by a middle-aged woman named Robin who didn't flinch when she saw who Jasmine was. Didn't comment on the news, just smiled and asked what they were looking for. An hour later, Devin sat behind the wheel of a 2018 Camry with a wide grin on his face and keys in hand. As they pulled out of the lot, he looked over at his aunt. You really didn't have to do all that. She smiled. Yeah, I did. Was it for him, the manager? No, she said. It was for you. But the truth was, it was also for every person who's ever been told they didn't belong. Just so they'd remember that grace can carry more weight than retaliation ever could. A week passed, then another. The dealership didn't apologize publicly, but they adjusted things quietly behind the scenes. New faces showed up on the sales floor. The cap on Cliff's desk disappeared. Business went on, but the air felt different. You could only hide behind silence for so long before it became a mirror. Meanwhile, at a community center in Garland, Jasmine stood on a small stage speaking to a room full of high school seniors about resilience and self-respect. She hadn't planned to talk about the dealership. She rarely brought personal stuff in her public work, but something shifted when a young girl in the back raised her hand and asked, "What do you do when someone disrespects you, but you're too tired to fight back?" Jasmine paused. She could have given the polished answer, the safe one, but instead, she let her guard down just enough. Sometimes, she began, you don't push back. Sometimes you just walk away with all your dignity intact. And that silence, that becomes the loudest sound in the room. The audience was quiet, not out of confusion, but understanding. I'm not saying be passive. I'm saying choose when to engage and when to elevate. There's a difference. And when you know your worth, you don't need to announce it. You carry it. Afterward, outside in the parking lot, one of the students ran up to her, a boy named Caleb. He was shy but determined. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been dealing with a teacher who talks down to me like I'm stupid. I didn't know how to handle it, but now I do." She put a hand on his shoulder. "Just don't let anyone make you small, all right? Ever." He nodded, and that was enough. That night, back at home, Jasmine and Nathaniel sat on the couch watching an old movie. Devin had taken the Camry to his study group and texted her when he got there as she asked. Nathaniel reached over and took her hand. "You think he's proud?" he asked. "Of the car." She teased. He smirked. "Of you." She looked at him for a second before answering. "I don't know, but I hope one day when he's in a room and someone tries to belittle him, he remembers not what I said, but how I stood." The TV flickered in the background, but neither of them was really watching. There was a comfort in the stillness, a quiet victory, because this wasn't a story about revenge. Not really. It was about a choice. The choice to walk away when staying would have meant sacrificing who you are. The choice to let character, not rage, do the talking. The choice to respond to disrespect, not with shouting, but with undeniable presence. Jasmine hadn't needed a speech. Nathaniel hadn't needed a platform. They simply lived the example. And in doing so, they passed something down. Not just a car, but a standard. One that whispered, "This is how you carry yourself when the world tries to knock you off balance." Not loud, but lasting. Nathaniel's deliberate actions, rather than harsh words or aggression, sent a clear message, demonstrating that sometimes controlling one's emotions and reacting strategically proves more effective than expressing anger. Furthermore, Jasmine and Nathaniel directly showed Devin how to deal with disrespect instead of just talking about it, thereby conveying a deeper lesson about how to carry oneself and avoid being diminished by others. What's more, Nathaniel's actions compelled the manager to confront the business consequences of his discriminatory behavior, even without direct threats, thus proving that losses in reputation and potential profit can sometimes be more persuasive than direct criticism. Ultimately, the narrative emphasizes that grace isn't a sign of weakness. It's a powerful form of controlled strength, allowing an individual to rise above pettiness and maintain their inherent worth. If this story resonated with you, even just a little, subscribe. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that grace isn't weakness. It's power under control. And sometimes the strongest response is walking away with your head high.